Arteta! What a strike! What a screamer! Zola! What a fantastic goal! Arsenal back in it! And here's Limpar, lines it up, finds the net. Arsenal are in front.
Nothing says you're willing to risk it all like hitting record on a podcast right as transfer news is swirling. This is the Arsenal Vision post-match podcast. My name is Elliot Smith, and you can block me on Twitter at Yankee Gunner. Okay, so there's rumors. Rumors we're going to spend huge amounts of money again. Where is this money coming from? It's coming from the money tree, obviously. We planted one in our backyard, and I keep looking at it, but as yet, no money. But yeah, it's coming, and apparently we're in for Upamecano, for fuck's sake, staying on brand here. We are in for Regani, maybe. Coutinho, no, that's done. Tim thankfully killed it with fire. But yeah, so there's stuff swirling, and hopefully we'll get through the podcast, publish it, and nothing will have happened. Then we can spend the $70 million and do 400 podcasts about that. So in the meantime, I'm going to do just a tiny bit of housekeeping and then introduce the full panel of people that are breathing heavily into their microphones. We are giving away 2 Arsenal shirts, and I would like you, right? Yes, you, to win one. Your choice, home or away. We'd offer you the third kit, but again, no apparent interest in releasing that one. Hashtag, what's going on? So yeah, you can go to arsenalvisionpodcast.com. There'll be a banner. It'll say win a shirt. You just punch in the info it asks for, which is basically a silly question that you will know the answer to, no doubt. And then you win a shirt, presumably. We're going to announce it on the season preview pod, and that is coming in 2 days. Full season preview. Predictions, hopes, wishes, dreams, fears. Not all fears, exclusively limited to defensive calamities, although most likely they will be. In any event, let's start the podcast. Paul's on Twitter at Pause in My Pants. Hello, Pause.
Woohoo!
Clive's on Twitter at ClivePAFC. Hello, Clive.
Hello, Willock.
Tim is on Twitter at Stillberto. Hello, Tim.
Hello there.
Hello there, indeed. Still feeling a little hot under the collar from our sexy chat from the last pod. So, what we're going to do is we're going to quickly handwave transfer rumor stuff because that is what the people crave. Then we'll get into the Barcelona game. We'll keep this one a little short because there's something every day this week. There's this podcast today, literally, you're listening to it. Then Tuesday, we're going to do, for patrons, a Fantasy Premier League pod because we're going to do a Patreon Fantasy Premier League. We'll keep it firewalled. We won't let it bleed into other content, but I'm just letting you know if you want strategy and stuff like that, have a special guest coming on who does a Fantasy Premier League pod. That's Tuesday. Wednesday is the season preview pod. Thursday is the Patreon season preview pod. And Friday, I am pleased to announce an Arseblog Arsenal Vision crossover YouTube show. Andrew and I will be on camera showing our, I guess you'd call them faces, and talking about Arsenal. So all of that is going on this week. Let's talk transfer rumors. And Tim, I will start with you because you hate them. What do you think of us smashing our transfer record yet again to go get a guy like Upamecano? You know what? The guy, Uppy.
Yeah,
What about Uppy?
I'm not going to try and say his name either. I think first of all, I'm delighted this has happened on the day that I published a piece about how bad the market is for centre halves at the moment.
Well, you're kind of right because they want what, 90 million or something.
Exactly. That's exactly my point. You know, United were quoted 80 million for Harry Maguire last summer. They said no, and then they've come back a year later. You know, presumably they've looked around a bit and gone, yeah, no, you're the only one here, aren't you? Let's do it. We've got a deal. So yeah, it's. I mean, I'm not massively surprised. His name has been mentioned quite a bit over the last kind of couple of years, and I imagine what they've done is they've been trying to make a bit of a list of the centre halves all summer, and his name's been on there, but probably under the too expensive kind of column. But now there's a couple of days to go. They've gone, oh shit, we've got to do something. So all the kind of slightly imperfect options, either your loan deals or you're far too expensive and more than we can afford, that's the territory we're probably in for the next couple of days. So I think it's interesting. I don't know if we've got enough time to do a deal of that size, particularly when Leipzig don't seem to particularly want to sell. But, you know, we did some business with them in January with Emil Smith-Rowe on loan. And maybe that's how we'll try and tempt them. I suspect it will be. I suspect we'll say, you're a German club, right? you like young English talent, right? We've got lots of it. We can send your way.
We also have German international centre backs we can send the other way to.
Well, that's the thing. They probably know them too well. But yeah, I'm not hugely surprised. I think it's quite obvious. We really need a centre half, and they're probably in panic stations.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if they are. I think it's become pretty clear what the situation is. I'm sure this presages a move for Koscielny out of the club. They're probably trying to move Mustafi, and they realize that if both of those things happen, a defender has to come in. Clive, let me ask you this. I mean, you had tweeted that we should move on from our interest in Tierney, or at least consider it if he's injured. Now, I'm really torn on this, because on the one hand, I've seen plenty of us buying broken players and would be fine with us avoiding it. On the other hand, if you're buying a Kieran Tierney, you're doing it because presumably you think he is a long-term solution at a position, and if he can't play till October or November, that's not a reason to abandon your strategy for the next 4 or 5 seasons. So help me make sense of my conflicting feelings about Kieran Tierney continuing to be a target in light of his injury situation.
I have conflicting feelings too, and my tweets are really around highlighting the risk associated with him. Right, so he's a young player that's been a young superstar at Celtic for a few years, and they have overplayed him. Simple as that. And he has got wear and tear injuries, and he's had them for a little while. He's had wear and tear injuries in a league that's not as intense as ours, in a league where Celtic have the ball a lot of the time. So that's a concern. So it's just risk management. That concerns me. The fact he can't even pass medical right now is an issue. When he kicks the ball, he's in pain. That just sort of concerns me a little bit. And also concerns me the way we're being bullied on price. I'm thinking, we're being bullied on price? You've got an injured player here who's got a track record of injury. We should be getting a discount. So for me, it's more everything around it. And I'm not one that fixates on individual players, right? I like certain players, but I don't fixate on them. And just because we've had him in our eye line for a long period of time doesn't mean the world will end if we don't go for him. There's lots of left backs out there. New ones appearing all the time into my life, right? So, but I generally like the idea of the player. The idea of having him and Bellerin bombing up and down. What's not to like? There is no guarantee that Tierney's going to be a very good player. He's not proven. We all love Pepe at the moment, but he's not proven in the Premier League. There's a little 5% of us who's thinking, I hope he's as good as we think he is. Because if he is, the world is great. But if he isn't, I'm going to be really disappointed, a little bit embarrassed about how excited I got when we signed him. It's the same for Tierney. He's not proven in the Premier League. There's a good chance he's going to be a very good player. He's very quick, the right shape. He can really bomb. He's got Bell-like athleticism, not very close to. But they're all good playing against Kilmarnock and Hamilton. The budgets between the two of them and Celtic is trust me, it's massive, right? You got bank managers he's playing against there, right? And that's why I've been a bit disrespectful. But you see what I mean? You're not talking the same level of athlete. And so I've just got his 5% down. I'm not saying that we shouldn't go for him. Like I say, I like the idea. But the feedback I got from that thread of tweets, it wasn't negative at all. People do recognise there is a risk aligned to this transfer, and maybe we should wait till January and wait to see how he comes back. Wait till your asset is healthy. Is that too crazy? That's silly.
No,
we've got two left backs. Yeah, we've got two left backs in place already. Wait till the asset is healthy. He's just been told it's going to be 2 months out. That takes us into where we now, August. That takes us into October. You're talking another 2 months before he would come in January. You have a chance to get back to some sort of level of fitness, which can take a month anyway. We can end up with an asset on our books that we can't even get near till November. Right, quite easily from a playing perspective. So I am not against waiting. I don't think we need to fixate on it. Obviously, I'm sure you're going to talk about centre backs, and that's where the light is shining right now. Yeah. So that's it for me.
Yeah, I mean, look, I totally agree. And by the way, I know you said you don't fixate on players. What you could try to do, Clive, is do it my way. Fixate on the players you don't like. I have sort of like a Sauron's gaze, whether it's Giroud or Mustafi, right? Just I fix my eye and I see the player I don't like. I'm kidding, but to some extent, I'm not kidding. Paul, let's talk about prioritizing defensive solutions right now. And I think at the beginning of the summer, left back would have been considered a priority. But in light of the situation at center back, and given that Nacho and Kolasinac aren't like zeros in the same way that really some of our central defensive options are kind of zero-y at the moment. I mean, I think I could forgive the club for saying, you know what, Tierney would have been nice, but we're moving off of that and prioritizing bringing in another body at center back. So my first question for you is, how do you feel if we don't wind up going for Tierney, but do bring in a center back?
I would be okay for that. Center back is just the crying, oozing wound that we have to fill right now. I think that's very, very clear. I thought it was interesting how much we tried to play out from the back against Barcelona. I mean, in a very good way, nearly suicidal play from the back. And that says to me that we're looking at playing at a higher level from the back out. Now, that's not just down to the centre backs, but that's a limit on what we can do as a club in terms of style of play and style of attack. And it led to some catastrophic moments during the game. It led to some extremely exciting passages of play up and down the pitch where we counter-attacked the shit out of them. And we have a team set up to counter-attack, but you've got to be able to play out from the back. The good news is the big rumours this week look like they're all around centre-backs, and it doesn't look like they're totally made up. So that seems to be where our activity and our focus is. But if we didn't have Tierney, I think we've been a bit harsh on Kolasinac, you in particular, Elliot, in that he had a period last season where he was actually pretty good at the old cutbacks. And I just wonder if what happened later on in the season as everybody got tired is they had pretty much figured out that our threat came down the left wing. And if they stopped Iwobi and Kolasinac to some extent, we weren't getting enough players into the box. And I wonder if he'll look a little better with, say, attackers coming in off that left wing, whether it's, I don't know who we'll put there, whether it's Martinelli, Reece Nelson, Iwobi, but on the other side we've got Pepe, like pulling the flies to, no, we can't use that analogy, bees to pollen, is going to give Iwobi, it's going to give Kolasinac, it's going to give whoever we play out on the left wing for overlaps, put a whole bunch of life into them we haven't seen. I wouldn't like to resurrect Nacho's career too much, but he's actually looked pretty good in pre-season, livelier than he did for chunks of last year. And maybe there was a big kind of getting back to full fitness issue there. Of course, he could, at his age, he could get injured again. But I mean, in the first half in particular, him and Nelson were facing Semedo and Dembele, and for a significant portion of it handled them pretty well. I thought Nelson did great. So I think if we were to say we had to pick between one and the other based on who we had in the pipe, and we had to pick a centre back, I'd sleep a lot better, knowing that we have not just a couple of full-back options who maybe have more life in them than we thought, but also some wing options we didn't have before to liven things up. I thought Nelson was excellent up and down that wing. And if you put Martinelli on that side with his work rate, they'll help out a hell of a lot. They'll get a lot more help than they got last year, I think.
Yeah, we might be getting a little ahead of ourselves in terms of how much usage players like that are actually going to get during the season. We know that preseason is difficult to extrapolate from in terms of what the information you've been provided with means in terms of its ramifications for the actual season. I think in terms of not rating Kolasinac, look, Kolasinac has some very good qualities. I think even Emery has said they've been trying to work on him defending in a back four. I don't think he's a full back in a back four, and that is sort of borne out by the fact that when we played back four this summer, well, granted, Kolasinac hasn't really been with the team, but Nacho is the guy who's played. And I think that there's a reason for that, because he is the one who is a more adept fullback, but he's aging and he can't get up and down the pitch the same way. So left back is an issue. It's not as much of an issue as center back. And Tim, we'll finish this part of the conversation just by saying this. There was an interesting chat going on in the Discord about what we'd be willing to spend. What should we be willing to spend on someone like Upamecano? No, that's not it. It's the other one. Upamecano. That's the one. It's going to go on like this. Gosh, now I don't want us to sign him just so I don't have to say his name anymore. But with Upamecano, like the debate was, should we give him like 70 million plus Emil Smith Rowe on a permanent move? And some people were saying, no, he's too big a potential star for us. He has too much potential. We have to hold on to him. I am sort of the position that there are moments where you can make a move that so dramatically impact your trajectory short term and long term that they almost become worth whatever you have to spend on them. I think we are currently poised for a dogfight for top four. I think if we brought in a competent to above competent center back, we become odds on to finish top four. I really think we would have the strongest non-top two squad at that point, and a squad really prepared to stake a claim to the top four pretty comfortably. Now, look, I realize the season doesn't necessarily always play out that way, and there are a lot of factors that can go into it, including injury. But if we get top four, if we get back into the Champions League, and then we can start really rebuilding with more prestige, we're not having to overpay to get players to come, we have more money that we can spend, and we've already shown we're willing to spend even when there doesn't appear to be that much money. Do you think that adding a quality center back can have a big enough impact on our trajectory that even sort of, quote, overspending or overutilizing assets to get one would be worth the return?
If that centre half is available, I wouldn't do like what United have done and spend, twice what someone's worth if they're not going to push the needle for you. I mean, I think it's fairly, you can draw a little line through like transformative centre half signings in Premier League history, and you look at us getting Sol Campbell, you look at Man United getting Rio Ferdinand, just an absolute lock at that point. They'd lost Jaap Stam, they had a year of Laurent Blanc, they needed a top quality centre half. They went out and got one of the best out there for, at the time, £30 million, which probably in this market represents, over 100 million. But it was an absolute lock. And to be honest, I didn't think Van Dijk was a lock when Liverpool got him. But yeah, I think, if Liverpool, for some mad reason, were open to selling Van Dijk this summer, how much do you think he'd go for? I think they'd double their money easily if they sold him now. So you can say that's a success. And yeah, I think we've reached a stage where we are crying out for that kind of, that level of reinforcement, because, Sol Campbell was the replacement for Tony Adams. We really needed someone at that point. I guess you can say Koscielny and Mertesacker between them, not on Sol Campbell or Tony Adams level, but good. And now we've lost both of them and not really replaced them. So we really need to push the level up again. So in one respect, yes, if our fairy godmother centre half is out there, because what we're effectively doing with this bid is, people are kind of scoffing at the 45 million. Just because we're spending all this money, it doesn't mean that that's our transfer kitty. It means that we're going into the overdraft, and that's going to have an impact on how much we have to spend next summer, et cetera, et cetera. Like I said on the last pod, we're throwing the shirt and the watch on the poker table here a bit. But if you've got, for a centre half that we were pretty convinced would turn our defence around long term, yeah, I'd do that. I'd go into, I'd dip into the overdraft for that. It's like if your boiler breaks in the middle of winter, right, and you have to get a new one and it costs £3,000, you do it, don't you? Because you can't not have central heating in the middle of December. And I think this is kind of similar, but by the same token, I don't really know anything about this Leipzig defender whose name I'm not going to try and say, so I don't
it's
know
easy.
if
it's Upamecano. What's so hard about that?
There's no N in there.
Upamecano. That's what I said. I don't know where you heard me.
Jesus Christ, I can't listen to it anymore.
If he's that guy, yeah, I'm happy to dip our fingers in the till a bit for it. If he's a 30 million defender we're paying 70 million for, no.
And the funny thing is, you could talk me into that, because a 30 million defender is a pretty good defender, and a pretty good defender.
Yeah.
there is this whole thing, Tim. I think we have almost over-exaggerated, but I don't know if you can over-exaggerate the existential importance of getting back into the Champions League at the end of this season and not becoming generationally a Europa League team. I mean,
of course.
Are we overstating it, or is it really that important?
I mean, it is, but like what we've also got to look at is that last summer we bought a new goalkeeper, we upgraded there. We did buy a centre half, and I think we upgraded. If we take into account that Socrates, were it not for Holding's injury, would have been the replacement for Mustafi, that's an upgrade. We got Lucas Torreira in central midfield as our defensive midfielder. That's an upgrade. Like we did a lot of defensive upgrading, and we even got back up for Bellerin. We got like an experienced Juventus right back. So we did actually buy some good defensive players last summer, and you can argue maybe this was down to other things a little bit, or maybe down to injuries in the back line, but it didn't really improve us. Like, I think there's an argument that we just, because of the type of team we are, we need that Sol Campbell, we need that Virgil van Dijk type signing, and really anything less is just going to get sucked into the vortex that is being a defender at Arsenal, which is a bit like being a chicken at KFC.
Yeah, which I don't know if our defenders are quite so delicious, but they are certainly quite as vulnerable. Yeah,
they're certainly as bad for your stomach.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, with that having been said, let's move on from the transfer rumors and talk about some actual football. And again, we'll keep it light today because we have a whole season preview coming up where we'll talk about the summer as a whole and what we're expecting going forward this season. But Clive, this was a fun game, I thought. I really actually quite enjoyed it. I thought for large stretches of the game, we looked like we absolutely belonged on that pitch with what was a very strong Barcelona team, despite them not having the Argentinian guy, whose name I can't pronounce. Is it Messiah? Messiah? Anyway, I think there's a couple of players we can sort of focus on and a couple things from this game that are interesting. And one that I want to talk to you about in specifics is Maitland-Niles. As much as we focused on left back and center back, why not focus on the other weakness in the team, which is right back? Bellerin is not back yet. We don't know what shape he'll be in when he comes back and whether he'll be able to avoid those seemingly unavoidable niggles that you pick up after a long-term injury. And that means it's Jenkinson or Maitland-Niles mostly for right back. And Maitland-Niles is a player that just confounds me because there are moments where he is so smooth on the ball, so silky, great touch, can pass, can run, can drive past a man. And then there are other times where he's so casual and can do something that no professional footballer should do. So I'm curious to get your take on his performance overall and your feeling about his readiness to start the season as our right back.
Yeah, I don't see what the debate is. I really don't. And I'm not just... he's a player that I like, but I do recognise his weakness. He has moments where he goes dark. He literally freezes on the ball and you wonder what's happening. But I think that's just concentration. It's not talent. Right, so we're concerned about Mustafi's talent, his ability to run, jump, and make decisions. We talk about a youngish player with concentration issues. That's two different things. I watched that game last night, watched the whole game, and I thought in the first half he was our best player. I thought the way he
sold him, Clive, at the end of the first half for about 80 million, couldn't we?
If you'd have asked Barcelona right now, which one of our defenders do you want to buy?
Well, I mean, that's a loaded question.
He was superb in the first half.
I'm very serious about this. I'm really...
No, I thought he was excellent. I'm just saying which one of our defenders is...
so disappointed in people judging on outcomes rather than source. Right, we made changes at that half time which took away our ability to transition. We played a lot deeper. We had the Alamo for like 15, 20 minutes where our heads were getting spun off. And we just come out of it. But maybe the byproduct of that was a little bit of tiredness in pre-season, a little bit of dead feet, a little bit of I'm going to pass it back to goalkeeper and the goalkeeper's moved and the picture's changed, lack of communication, the sort of stuff that happens in pre-season. It's as simple as that. And then people are going to say, yeah, but he gave a penalty away in the Europa League final. Well, Giroud stopped still, stuck his backside into him, went forward, got a penalty. Experience versus inexperience. Right? It doesn't mean he's a bad player. I don't think there's anything to see here. In fact, I was just about, I actually said before that he's playing brilliant. I think he's improving at a rapid rate. And everyone's got this nostalgic view of Bellerin, by the way, who I like, who's been a major offensive player for us. But by the way, it's only a year and a half ago, people were killing him. And I don't remember him being a stellar defender on the back post. I don't remember him being an absolutely brilliant one-on-one defender. He's a progressive, stealer, transition footballer that's brilliant when we're on the move, and he steals it like Clichy used to. As he moves as the ball's travelling towards him, and he drives. He drives out there. He's got unbelievable fitness and a repeat sprint ability. But we're not talking about a rock-solid defender here. We're talking about classic modern wing-back, go-forward fullback. That's what it is today. So I do think the two of them is a brilliant combination. I felt that we've overpaid Bellerin in the past, and I do honestly believe that's indirectly caused his injury, because we've been over-reliant on him for far too long, which means Maitland-Niles is a very important player for this squad. And in modern football, where fullbacks are under a lot of stress, do lots of running more than anybody else, I feel he's equally as important as Bellerin, and to allow Bellerin to develop back at the right sort of pace. And for Arsenal, when they play Maitland-Niles, their style doesn't change, unlike on the other side of the pitch where we can barely put Kalashnik as a fullback because we're not sure what we're going to get.
Yeah.
So I do think it's very important that we don't slaughter this player because he made a mistake in pre-season. I think it's really important we're better than that. Because I think he's going to be very, very important to our club going forward. And I'm starting to believe, actually, you really are a fullback stroke right wing back. This is what you are. You are no longer a centre midfielder, because I've got nothing to judge it on any longer, because you've been at fullback so long. Left side or right side. People saying put him in centre midfield. What are they basing that on? Because what I'm seeing is somebody that really get comfortable on that right side.
It's the burst. It's the ability to carry the ball. I mean, he can dribble a man and burst forward, and that's something that we've lacked in midfield. He's a good stand-up tackler, which I think, again, is something that in midfield is very helpful. The issue for me with him is there's two different ways you can react to pressure on a pitch, right? You can be calm, and when things get serious, you are alert, and when you have time, you are patient. And I would create a range. And on one end of the range would be the way Chambers reacts, which is he panics early and kicks the ball long. He doesn't want to be under pressure. And then there's the other end of the range, which is Maitland-Niles, which is his alert doesn't go off early enough. And he can get caught on the ball just being too calm, too willing to take the extra dribble, shimmy, move the ball, switch feet, try to find an open man. I love that he is calm, and I love that he tries to progress the ball, and I love that he has the courage to beat a man. I like his athleticism, I like his trickery, I like his stand-up tackling. I just think he needs to recalibrate his alertness to danger, and I think just staying switched on. What we saw last season is every once in a while, players could run in behind him because he just doesn't have
concentration.
That. Well, it's that.
Concentration.
I agree with that.
It's
the other thing,
concentration, and I will say it's concentration and communication. The communication across our back four is zilch, right? And we see these issues. We saw it yesterday. People don't get passed on. They don't get passed on. It's something that we suffer from. We lack real communication leadership back there, and so we end up being like individuals within the unit. And we look after ourselves, and things happen around us. I mean, the run yesterday for the goal was a classic example of a player running behind another one, not passed on appropriately. One player trying to track a play he could never catch, and the other one couldn't see him out of his side view mirrors, right? So I think it's another pre-season game where Monreal didn't pass the player on. I can't remember which game that was now. And basically, they scored for that one as well. I think it might be Leon, actually. But this is what's happening at the back there. It's communication. It's lots of things.
Yeah.
But what I will say, there is a list of priorities here, and Maitland-Niles is nowhere near the top of that list of priorities, in my opinion. He's somebody that actually I think is improving, and I wish that didn't happen yesterday, because I think at the end of the game we'd have been talking about something else.
Do you think it impacted him? I mean, do you think something like that can have a knock-on effect? You worry about that? Because I mean, it's at the new camp, big crowd, a lot of people whistling you. He held his head. He looked pretty annoyed by it.
He looked really annoyed and frustrated.
To be fair, though, Clive, he did start the half. He got himself in 3 or 4 pickles in the first 12 minutes. It was like second half, he just kind of came on, switched off or something.
I think if you look to the game, Paul, I felt we were playing in the wrong areas in the second half. I don't understand why we suddenly went deep and totally went for where we try and counter attack. We were playing Cruyff turns in our box. Callum Chambers on a Cruyff turn in his box. It wasn't because he wanted to do it, because he just had to. They were pressing us in our box. That's how deep we were. And I just felt that a lot of our players sort of lost their way for that period. And we just came out of it, which was a real frustrating thing. And what we should be talking about Maitland-Niles was actually when he made the mistake, he stopped pressing forward. And I think it weighed him a little bit longer. And that's what really concerned me, because he has nothing to be ashamed of. Right? It's a pre-season own goal. That's all it is. And I don't want to see those things hang around, because I saw something else in the first half that I haven't seen for a long time. I saw a lot of dynamism against we're talking about one of the best left-sided attacking teams ever. The way they use Jordi Alba to run off your shoulders, they really focus on the left side like they used to on the right side when Dani Alves used to play. Left side cutbacks all the time. You've got to be, if you're the right back playing against Barcelona, good luck.
Yeah.
And I thought he did a great job.
And Maitland-Niles' crosses in the first half, Clive.
They were good. Look,
yeah.
I think the other thing is, too, you got to feel for him. He spent this summer, trying to chase around Kingsley Coman and Ousmane Dembele and whoever the hell else he's chased around, quite a few of them. It's just, no fullback on an island looks great against that caliber of talent. They get beat. And I don't have a problem with that. And I think if he can just keep his alertness and concentration high, I think he has the physical traits. Let's not make it a Maitland-Niles cast, though, because we're closing in on that. And we've got a couple other guys to talk about. Before we get to because again, I enjoyed this game, and I thought there were times that we looked really good. I thought in the first half when we pressed and were progressive and passed the ball pretty well through the thirds, I thought we looked decent. But Paul, we have to talk defense, because that is the area of concern. And it does look like maybe Emery is thinking Socrates and Chambers will be his center back pairing to start the season. I'm not a huge Socrates fan. I'm just not. But he definitely looks like the competent one among the group we have right now. So let's put him aside and talk Chambers. I don't want to kill the kid. I think he did some good things in this game. But, we saw it later. We'll talk ultimately about the goal that Suarez got to win the game. But I think the combination of his discomfort passing the ball, with the ball at his feet, he still looks nervy, and his, I think, not consistent positioning are things that really worry me. How do you feel about the performance he had and the likelihood that he will be our starting center back when the season kicks off?
I think the likelihood is likely. He basically played the whole game, so I think Emery was having a darn good look at him to see what he had. I think we were most stable with Socrates and Chambers. I seem to like Socrates more than most. I feel still pretty good about Socrates, but who does he partner with? So I thought, you see Chambers overplaying things and getting caught up with his feet, with the ball under his feet. He's still pretty leaden-footed, and he's got slow feet and slow movement, even though he's got good skills. So he was warming up to playing out from the back. We were ballsy the whole game playing out from the back. It was breathtaking stuff that mostly came off in the first half.
Well, it's preseason. If that's how you want to play, you might as well do it, right? Who cares if you concede goals? It's practice. Literally, it's practice.
Yeah. But obviously, we're doing it to a purpose, right? You don't practice in preseason if the manager is
because it's what we want to do, yeah.
Yeah. So, but I guess the team you don't really want to do it against, but we did a really good first half. They were pressing us more than we were pressing them offensively. On the other hand, and maybe it was just a function of pressure, possession, and what area of the pitch you're playing in, but we were playing out where they didn't really have to. So it was a very interesting duel, and pretty even in the first half. And when we had to go back at them late in the second half with Ceballos on the pitch, etc., that was a really good representation of us playing up and forward. So there was some really interesting phases. I think defensively, there was nothing that could help you sleep at night. Apart from the first half, we were relatively solid with Socrates and Chambers. I wonder if it wasn't the screen, though. I thought Willock's game was really interesting. He's part of a two-man pivot in the first half with Xhaka. My hope, maybe not belief, but my hope is that Willock and Ceballos can both give Xhaka more life in terms of how much we'd like to see them on the pitch, because Xhaka was very good springing us forward in the first half, and Willock bought him a lot of legs. There was that run across the box to close down. Was it? I don't know who was getting the shot off, but it was a diagonal across the box in the first half that Willock just tore in there. Yeah. I thought it was Maitland-Niles who was running so fast to block the shot, and he was kind of all over the place in terms of his legs, taking him to places when he needed to, but positionally he was very solid, and you contrast that to Guendouzi in the second half as a screen for the defence. And Guendouzi's truly a nomad. I mean, the gaps between him and Xhaka open up and close all the time. And Willock basically sat back for that first half with a couple of times he took off to do something very specific and then got back in place. He was actually relatively quiet, but his contributions were all significant. And he kept it simple, and he'd feed Xhaka so that Xhaka could do his thing. I think that was a very interesting look. I thought it was interesting that he was kept on the pitch in the second half, but in the advanced midfielder role, and then it was him that Ceballos came on for. But Guendouzi, I love Guendouzi, of course, especially what I think he could become. But we've seen him and Xhaka enough to know that that's kind of like an accordion in terms of Guendouzi. He's just a nomad. Yeah. I think the write-up on Mislintat, from Mislintat and other people when we signed him, was that sure, he travels all over the pitch, but he's young. But that's what he is. He just goes all over the pitch, and he finds it hard to restrain it.
Yeah, I think the structure of the midfield started to get a little less disciplined in the second half. And I mean, there were a lot of changes, and we were changing positions, and, Ozil moved out to the right, and I don't know how switched on he was from the flank versus where he was in a central position earlier in the game. So there's a lot of factors that go into that. But Tim, well, first let's wrap up the central defense conversation. Do you feel pretty confident that it'll be Socrates and Chambers, and are you grudgingly okay with that for Newcastle?
Yeah. That with the options we have available, that's what I'd go with. And to be absolutely fair, I think we were right pretty much with those two. I mean, the first goal we did concede, I mean, it was hardly their fault, was it? And then the second goal, as loath as I am to say, it's all Mustafi's fault. I mean, we'd broken them up at that point, albeit we were under quite a lot of pressure. I think what's interesting about this game, I agree with you, I thought it was a fun game as well. I thought it was really like the Lyon game, which does kind of concern me a bit, in that we were really pretty good in the first half. Not as dominant as we were against Lyon because we were away at Barcelona, but I thought defensively we looked good. And I just thought back to the answer Unai Emery gave to my question at the press conference after the Emirates Cup, where I asked him about the defence, and he said we were fine in the first half, and it's because our positioning was good, and we had a bit of control of the game and of the ball. And then, and you saw that, I thought we were fine defensively in the first half against Barca, as fine as you can expect to be defending against the likes of Dembele and Griezmann.
Especially when you remove the danger we came under that we caused ourselves, just giving it away, playing out from the back. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But even then, I thought the recovery was pretty good.
Yeah, mostly.
But, he talked a bit about, after the Emirates Cup, the concentration going a little bit, and whether that's a symptom of the amount of changes. But it just seemed... thing happened again. The positioning of the whole team was, as Clive said, 10, 15, 20 yards further back, and they just came under a little bit more pressure. And then, of course, you bring someone like Luis Suarez on, and that's going to make life more difficult. I thought for the defence, this was a really, really valuable game, because we played a game where we knew we were going to be under pressure. And what we're trying to do, basically, is see if Chambers and Socrates, that they're going to have to play against Newcastle, because even if we're signing a centre-back as we speak, that centre-back is not going to be ready for Sunday. So what we need some indication of whether those two can form a partnership, and what better way to test that than to give them 90 minutes away at Barcelona in the new camp. So I thought it was very valuable in that respect. I thought they did pretty much okay, and the problems we ran into weren't really of their making. Although I do take your point on Chambers. I think he was harried, and he panicked. I'm not convinced Newcastle will do that quite as much. And the other thing about playing Barcelona as well, why it's the ideal friendly, I think, to have at this stage of pre-season. It's not so much Barca's technical level that gets me when I watch them. It's their physical level. Like, they hound you. They absolutely hound you. Even in this friendly, Dembele and Griezmann were absolutely all over our centre halves in a way that I think is only remotely matched by like Tottenham, Liverpool and City in the Premier League. And that was just the friendly. So I think, Emery always talks about we have more information. That's like one of his kind of stock phrases, and I think he'll have got a lot of good information out of this. Yeah.
So let me ask you this. I mean, to me, I look at our defending this way. This is a team that can't sit in a low block. We just can't defend in a low block, period. But in the first half, when we were pressing them a little and, bracketing their midfielders and making it tough for them to play through the thirds and possessing the ball a little bit more and passing it around ourselves, we kept the ball away from our defense. And that's how we have to defend. I mean, to me, if we sit in a low block, we're going to get killed, period. So it has to be a pressing team and it has to be a possessing team. So that brings us to the midfield and the question of how to set it up and how to ensure that we're not losing the possession battle, losing the territorial battle, and eventually getting pushed deeper and deeper. Let's talk Xhaka just for a second. He plays every preseason game, almost all the game, all summer long. He's rumored to be up for a captaincy. It seems like this is a player who is going to be a nailed-on starter and regular feature for the club, and I can't help but feel that we have some other players who maybe give us a dimension to our game that we might be better off with. So where do you finish this summer on in terms of your evaluation of Xhaka, his importance to the team, and the likelihood that we're not really ready to move on from him?
I think we are ready to move on from him. We're not ready to move on from him for the first two games because Guendouzi and Torreira have been at summer tournaments and Ceballos came in late. I think that's a really short-term issue. That's definitely, we can't play Guendouzi and Torreira against Newcastle. And you think
Emery agrees with you, though, in light of all the information you have?
I'm not 100% convinced. The thing that gives me a little bit of hope is that he still hasn't entirely decided on this captaincy issue, is the information we're getting. And for me, if you've made Xhaka captain for the last two kind of pre-season games where all the other kind of quote-unquote captains have been available, like, what are you waiting for? Why wouldn't you just make him captain? And I think the reluctance suggests that he's not entirely sold. And like I've said before, I think maybe we fixate a little too much on the captaincy issue because it didn't help Petr Cech last year. It didn't help Aaron Ramsey. It didn't help Mesut Ozil, and it hasn't helped Lauren Koscielny either. So, I'm not convinced that's such a big thing. But the hesitance says to me, like, I don't think Unai Emery is as ready as I am to see Guendouzi and Torreira form the basis of our midfield going forward. But I don't think he's a million miles away. And what really interested me was in the second half, Guendouzi. I kind of think he does this anyway, but it was really, really obvious to me that Guendouzi was the one that was dropping deep and picking the ball up from the centre halves, and it wasn't Xhaka. And I don't think that was just like youthful impetuousness on or enthusiasm on Guendouzi's part. That looked to me like instruction, and it's one I'm all for because I don't think he's quite as good a distributor as Xhaka. Not he's good one, I think he's very good at spreading the play out. He's probably not quite as accomplished as Xhaka at that yet. It's just it takes Xhaka too long to do it, whereas Guendouzi does it quicker. He picks the ball up, he's immediately looking up, his head's swiveling all the time, and he moves it on. Whereas Xhaka just takes too long to do that. And I think that could be quite significant that Guendouzi was the one doing that in the second half. Because if Granit Xhaka's not doing that, like, what the hell is the point in him? Because he's not a number 8 to me. The only role that he can play that you get a dependency on him is doing exactly that, picking the ball up off the centre halves and moving it on. And if you've got Guendouzi doing that instead, then like Xhaka is completely redundant in my eyes. But, I think this will take a little while to shake out. I do think Xhaka's spot is potentially up for grabs, but probably not in August.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's hard for me, right? Because I see Ceballos and the movement he has and the elusiveness and the drive and what Willock has added, who I think really does look poised to be a star. We sometimes overrate our academy players, and especially based on preseason performances, but I think it's real with Willock. I think he's making the leap.
Yeah.
And then Torreira has the mobility, the elusiveness. Guendouzi has the range, and I would just love to see us transition to a more mobile midfield like that. I'm not convinced Emery is ready to make that transition. I think he still trusts Xhaka to be the 100-pass player in the team, but we'll see. I mean, Clive, we saw a lot of Xhaka this summer. We saw a lot of good things for him. We saw that a lot of the same flaws are there. I think it is fair to say that the debate over Xhaka has been overly polarized, that there are people that think he's garbage, which he isn't. There are people that I think are on the other side of that, as is always the case in Arsenal, in the sort of Arsenal's zeitgeist, Paul?
Yes.
Zeitgeist?
Yes.
Thank you.
It means ghost of time, spirit of the time.
Thank you. But for me, with Xhaka, I just see a player who is exactly what he is. He can distribute long very well. He can play it out to the flanks really nicely. He's got a hammer of a shot from range. When it's on target, that's nice, but he lacks mobility and awareness, and sometimes his brain switches off. And so the question I have for you is, would you be moving away from him? And what is the midfield you'd like to see that maybe adds another dimension?
I think Xhaka hasn't really changed since he got here. He's a decent player that's got obvious flaws, right? So, and we all know what they are. But he does have a level of leadership, and he holds the team together sort of with these sort of experience and presence. He doesn't mean he's beyond mistake, because we all know what his mistakes are. He takes a while to get it onto that left foot. He can get his head down. He can get pressed. He can get dispossessed. But really, for me, as soon as I saw the Emirates Cup game, actually, I've known for a while, Guendouzi is Xhaka's takeout. It's as simple as that. Because he has the same DNA. He wants to go and get it. He wants to run it. So he needs to be in charge, and Xhaka likes to be in charge. And so you've got two alphas playing in that same position. Now, it can work up to a point, but they're both sort of one pace, although I think Guendouzi is showing a little bit more of a step this year. And as soon as the opportunity comes for Guendouzi, remember he's just turned 20, if he has, he will take over the base of our midfield. He will take over the playmaking. He has got the range of pass. He's got a different style of pass, but he's got just as much variation. He moves it quicker. He's got as much personality. He plays with no fear. He absolutely wants it all the time. And I just see him improving to such a point where this debate will no longer be a debate. And I've said before, we will develop away from Xhaka because it will just happen. A lot depends
Cream rises to the top.
Yeah, let it happen. Just relax. Let it happen. We haven't got to pick the team in August.
Let me just back up for a second. Relax.
Yeah.
What could you define it? Is it a synonym? Yeah. What do you have? What is that?
We must stop doing this, right? We mustn't pick the team in August, right? Because the real crunch months come after Christmas, right? So that's what we need to be thinking about. We've got Joe Willock. It's great that we've got this. And I've said it before online. We've got a young team developing beneath the team. There are 3 or 4 players that really do represent the past, and they are going. They are being developed past. There are people pushing them for their places. And you could say Koscielny represents the past, Mustafi, Xhaka, Ozil, and maybe up to a point, although it's slightly unfair, Mkhitaryan. But I'm being unfair there. But those players, they represent yesterday's Arsenal. We are not ready to throw them all into the bin, although some people are. But we're already moving away from them. And some of these new signings and young players coming forward show you what could happen. But they're not ready yet. There's pre-season football, and then the real ball comes out at the weekend, where points really do matter. And in pre-season, some younger players really show because they're naturally fitter. And the older players are a bit cute about how they peak, right? So just be aware this is just a preview to what could happen. But, from what I've seen of Guendouzi and then seeing the little cameo from Ceballos, you think yourself, okay, this is really exciting. their ability to just move it, and they're just not afraid. They're just not afraid, and that shows you that there won't be long before they're ready to own the centre midfield of Arsenal. It won't be long at all, but it doesn't have to be August. It's just going to take a little bit longer yet.
No, that's fair. Well, one person that does own a position is Aubameyang, and Clive, I'll stay with you just for a second. We haven't seen much of Lacazette this summer, and it's not Lacazette's fault, but it certainly makes me wonder, especially with the avalanche of minutes that Aubameyang has been played, if Emery isn't really trying to determine whether he wants to make this Aubameyang's team. If you drop me down from space, and some people would suggest that's exactly where I came from, and I watched Arsenal preseason, having never watched this sport before, which again, some people would say is the case, I would say that guy's different gravy. He's different. He looks so much better than everybody on the pitch this summer. He's just absolutely standing out. And when he is on like this, you think that he can be the difference between this team being good and being special. I'm curious if you think the way he's played this summer, and once again, the way he looked in this game, the way he took his goal, which was breathtaking.
The only thing that bulged more than the net was my shorts.
Thank you for that. Hang on. Okay. Okay. Clive, can you say something nice about Aubameyang so I can go throw up in my Snapple bottle?
Yeah, I mean, it does look like his team, and from the first preseason game, he's been right on it. And of course, as soon as someone looks that good, what do I do? I start worrying, right? Because I'm starting thinking, okay, this can't last. So I'm actually glad that the rumours already not going on loan, and depending on what you read, and I hope it is true, not going on loan, because he's the only one with the speed that can make us take Aubameyang off the pitch at certain periods, hopefully if the game is won, to replicate him. I do think we have to think about how we manage, not just him, but all the players. I know I've got a few things on mind for the preview coming up this week, but he looks so good, I don't want him substituted. And I shouldn't be saying that about preseason.
See, I'm the other way. Minutes. I'm at like 15 minutes. I'm like, okay, he's running enough. Take him off. Wrap him in cotton wool. Rest him, please.
85 minutes he played. Yeah, him and Socrates. They're the two irreplaceables at the moment. They're just too valuable, right? So, and they're playing too much, and we're getting away with it. Like I said, we don't know what, he's obviously took a bit of a whack. So he's lost a week of pre-season. He may be back training now, but we don't know where he is. I think there'll be a sharing of the game at the weekend. I'm disappointed, not disappointed, but I'm a bit concerned that we haven't seen much of Iwobi this pre-season. And I do value him, and I think he will be increasingly valuable as the season goes on. But maybe we just got to give him that time away so he is valuable when we really need him. But yeah, Aubameyang, he is the superstar at the moment until number 19 rocks up, and see how he goes. But the team belongs to Aubameyang, and he is showing it at the highest of levels, and he looks very comfortable. I'm looking at him, I'm thinking to myself, okay, there's good players out there, but he's really bordering on world class. He really looks world class to me, and I just wish he was 27. Right, that's what I wish. But to be honest, he's not looking like a 30-year-old. He's looking very, very sprightly.
Yeah. To be fair, I wish I was 27 too. But yeah, he looks so incredible. And Paul, I think the one really interesting thing in this game that I was trying to focus on, and I literally had the thought in my head, don't even bring him up on the podcast, because it scares me to discuss Mesut Ozil. I have to admit, the social media mob, both for him and against him, has made him such an unpleasant player to debate, positively, negatively, anywhere in between, that I loathe discussing his performances, because whatever follows out of my mouth next is going to be perceived as agenda, is going to be ridiculed. Now, to be fair, most of what I say deserves all of that, but I thought Mesut Ozil had one of those Ozil-y kind of games where he makes that pass that's sort of a very Mesut Ozil pass, a special one in the space between the center backs to sort of set Aubameyang in for goal. Now, to be fair, I thought the way Aubameyang took it and pirouetted was special. He still had a lot of work to do there. But he also had moments where we were on the counter and the ball didn't leave his feet as quickly as I'd like. He did have moments where he made really nice runs on the counter, and Reece Nelson, I think it was, kind of failed to spot him, and Ozil had a few unhappy glances with the young man. So I'd rather get you in trouble than get me in trouble.
Yeah.
How do you feel about Mesut Ozil's performance? And especially in light of the fact that in the 4-2-3-1, we can see him playing as the 10 behind the striker, but in a 4-3-3, it's harder to find a spot for him. So has he made an argument this summer and maybe in this game for an inclusion to start the season?
Yes. So I thought he was good in the first half. Sure, there was the, I guess you would say, Aubameyang made his assist look world class with the turn and the shot that made the net bulge, and the only thing that made but I actually thought Ozil was working his socks off pretty much the whole first half. In particular, what you'd see is he'd drop into the left back position to pick up the ball and help us build play up the pitch. So I actually thought he was pretty influential in the first half. I mean, he's never super high touch, and even in the first half, he tended to slow us down at times before speeding us up. So he does like to go down and up through the gears. Ceballos is a guy who just likes trying to find the fifth, the sixth, the seventh gear, but Ozil kind of uses that up and down thing in terms of tempo. And when he's not really feeling it, or he's out of form, or he's in a bit of a funk in a season, we mainly see him in the lower gears, and it's frustrating. But I think he's on it at the moment. I think the second half is more the case I don't think he did anything wrong. It was over on the right-hand side, basically, covering Maitland-Niles, and I think he worked fairly hard, but it's Ozil, so it wasn't exactly getting the most out of him. It was more, hey, there's only so many people we're taking off the pitch and you're not the guy, so we left him on. So second half, he was not a huge factor. First half, I thought it was quite influential in helping us play out up the left side. So I definitely think he's still feeling it. He's still good. And, maybe we'll see. I hope we're flexible in terms of when and how we play him. The first half against Barca was kind of, you could say it was 4-2-3-1, but we saw so little of the ball. We were basically sitting in a 4-4-2 with Ozil and Aubameyang, the two up front, but Ozil taking liberties to drop very deep right beside Xhaka or whoever down in that bottom corner to play it out. So it was an interesting look. I don't know we'll play too many teams where we're forced into that shape for a whole half. But I thought it was actually pretty good in helping us play out. That was my take.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that's hard for me, right, is it's suddenly gotten to be a very competitive area of the pitch because Pepe's probably going to play a lot. Aubameyang's going to play a lot. You would imagine Lacazette will play a lot. Ceballos has been promised 40 appearances, which if we're talking about moving away from Xhaka, by the way, I didn't mention it, but whatever you think Ceballos is going to do early in the season, if we're going to live up to the 40 appearance promise, he's going to have to play a lot too.
Is that real, though?
Yeah. I mean, that's been widely... Anybody want to refute that? That's been widely reported. Anybody?
I've read 30 as well. So 40 is a lot, mate. But I've read 30 as well. But I've also read 40, so it depends what you want to believe.
Let's put it this way.
I don't believe it, but I don't have any evidence. I just don't believe you can do that in a team.
Yeah, I mean, it may very well not be true. I'm going to choose to believe it because I want to see him play a lot. But, tomato, tomato. I would say this then, Paul. I thought Ozil did just fine. I don't know that I thought he was as good out on the right in that formation where he played in the second half. But one guy that I'd love to see him really step it up, but he didn't is Mkhitaryan. The ball's just getting away from him too easily. It's not coming off for him. If there is a position that could be had in this team, I would think it's kind of on the left wing in a 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1. If Aubameyang and Lacazette don't both start, then that's the position where there's an opportunity. Emery's given Mkhitaryan every chance to try to claim it. He's also played a little deeper at times this summer, and it's just not coming off for him. Do you think it's just as simple as the decline is starting to set in? I mean, this is a player who's at the end of his prime.
Yeah, I mean, if you just judge it on chances this preseason, you say Emery's really gearing up to use the guy. And I do like Mkhitaryan. I'm a bit defensive of him, but man, I scarred this game, and he was dog shit. He gave no passes came off. He gave everything away. I mean, he's a bit Ramsey-esque in that he'll try 50-50 balls all day long. And on a good day, he ends up in 60 or 70%.
Paul, there was one counterattack where we had, I think, a 3-on-2, really good positions, and he literally just fell down. Like he just fell over and the ball went to the
He was caught
defender.
between choices as to where he was going to put the ball. And I thought about, first reaction to that was, oh, well, people fall. And actually, that's more a guy who doesn't know what he's going to do with the ball, so his feet doesn't know what to do next.
Yeah, it's also how we wound up giving away a penalty to Birmingham at home last season. I mean, not with the falling, but blowing an easy counterattack. Yeah.
So this was kind of falling off a cliff for him, and he's been getting quite a bit of criticism. But I thought I like the guy, and it hurts me to say he was dog shit in this. But I mean, he still got quite a few minutes, but that's a spot up for grabs. The only thing you'd say about Mkhitaryan is he started really slow last preseason too, so he might be the one who benefits from the you totally ignore preseason.
Yeah, that's actually a really fair point. The older you are, the more preseason is just about getting your breath, than your game coming off.
So an asterisk against his preseason in that it might just be him getting all the bad passes out of his system, but he was literally a net minus, I thought, especially in the first half. So I would not, Martinelli and Xhaka came on wide in the second half, Nelson in the first half, and they just gave us so much more than Mkhitaryan did.
Yeah, and I mean, it seems like Emery wants to trust Mkhitaryan based on his usage this summer, but he certainly hasn't rewarded him with any performances that suggest he's ready to step it up. So we'll have to see what happens. Yeah. Tim, let's do a quick whip around before we say goodbye of the young players that did get in on this game. I mean, Martinelli played and was interesting. Xhaka came on and had a little bit of an interesting cameo there. Nelson obviously played a lot of minutes. Any of the younger players finish their season emphatically for you in this game? Or their preseason?
Other than Willock, not really. I think Willock is the one who's really stood out. I think Nketiah did at the beginning, but maybe when the quality of opposition went up and their preparedness went up, he kind of, and of course you've got Aubameyang playing brilliantly in pre-season, then maybe he fell away a bit. I think he needs to go on loan. Personally, I think he's reached a stage where he has to play regularly. And I see that happening. Tyrese John-Jules signed a new contract today, and I very much wonder if that was on the basis that he will take what Nketiah's spot was last year. But I was hugely impressed with Willock as I have been all pre-season. But I've been impressed with him in that Ramsey role all pre-season. I thought what was really interesting about him was that he's shown other strings to his bow, and he just looks like a really good kind of modern all-round midfielder who can play in that double pivot and can play ahead of it. I wouldn't say like we got any really brand new information on any of the young players in this game. I think more than the young players, that the players I've been looking at this pre-season are the ones who aren't so young anymore, who aren't in the potential bracket anymore. Players like Callum Chambers and Emi Martinez, who you assume the plan going forward is for them to be, like first reserve in their positions, and whether they're actually up to that. I haven't seen anything from Martinez to suggest he's not thus far, even though I see him as maybe a competent backup, but I'm not sure I see him really challenging Bernd Leno. But we've got so much shit to sort that it wasn't all going to get sorted this summer, and it's kind of fine parking that issue for a year. And I've really liked Xhaka. Nelson, I think there's his decision making and sometimes his touch is just a little bit off. He's got a touch of the Walcotts to me.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Mm-hmm. In some moves you think, oh, you've tripped over or you've run off without the ball, and then sometimes he pops up and he does something really that maybe that's who he is. Maybe he irons that out. I think that's the thing with some of the flaws we see in pre-season, a bit like Maitland-Niles and concentration and stuff. I'm never fully convinced that you properly iron that out in a player. I think it's just who you are as a person. I'm sure Maitland-Niles has watched himself and been coached many times and been told, right, don't relax too much sometimes. But it's like if that's you, that's you. You can't stop being you. And we're seeing this in more experienced players like Xhaka and Mustafi. You can't stop being who you are, and how your brain, how you act subconsciously. It's very, very difficult to change that. And so maybe that's who Nelson is, because when we were looking at Walcott at 18, 19, we were thinking, yeah, his technique's rubbish, but that will get better, and it never did, because that's just not who he was. So I think we've seen some really, really interesting stuff from our youngsters. Most of our youngsters, I think, have built a real case to be, at least valuable squad players. And then we've got some players in the middle, like Chambers, Martinez, who kind of, they've got something to prove yet, and they're not in the potential bracket anymore. And we're probably going to have to go with them this season. But, for those players, this is going to be a really big season, because hopefully this time next year, those are issues we'll be able to address, and we'll be able to look at players like Chambers and Martinez and say, yay or nay, effectively. So I think the preseason was more interesting for that level of player than for the younger players.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Before I finish off with Clive, let me just ask you this. I mean, as a Brazil watcher yourself, Gabriel Martinelli has played quite a bit this summer. We've seen a decent amount of him. Yep. I've been impressed with his directness. He's a very active player. He's energetic. He's tigerish, and when he gets the ball, he just wants to go forward. I think look, I'm not saying he's going to play at all. He may not. But he looks further along than maybe I anticipated he would look. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think so. I think he'll be in the Europa League squads, and he might not even start those games. But I think he'll definitely be a part of those squads, and we'll see him in the League Cup and stuff like that. The kind of, I guess, advantage he's got is that even though he's been playing at a low level, he's been playing men's football. He hasn't been playing, apart from that kind of brief sojourn in the Copinha in January, he's been playing men for the last year to 18 months now, and on bad pitches. Like, the pitches in the Brazilian top flight are absolutely dreadful. So like the pitches in Brazilian regional football, they might as well be playing like on the beach, frankly. So he's got that to him. He's got that edge. He's got that guys playing for their rents, trying to kick his legs off. So I think maybe it stands to reason that he'll have some rough edges, but he's perhaps a little bit further along than some of our guys who've been playing, youth football in the space age, feng shui kind of environment of London Colney.
Yes, well said. No, it's actually a really, really good point, because I think he shows that. He doesn't shy away from the challenge. He doesn't look lightweight at all. He has good drive and energy. His intensity is right. I like the player, and I think he certainly looks ready to contribute something. He arrives in the box and has a decisiveness about his finishing, albeit maybe not as accurate as we'd like. He had the one that whistled by the post that he kind of side volleyed from, I think it was a Saka cross. He actually took it off of Aubameyang's boot. So there you go for confidence. Clive, we'll finish with this. I want to quickly touch on the goal that won the game. Look, it is very easy to pick on Mustafi right now. It helps no one. I don't think he should be playing for us. It'd be great if we could shift him, but piling on at this point doesn't add a hell of a lot. You got to kind of just laugh about it. But there are debates about who's responsible in that goal. And I sort of see three tiers of responsibility, because my biggest pet peeve about Arsenal over the last 5, 7, 10 years in the way we defend is just way too many times I see an opposition midfielder ball at his feet 45 yards from our goal and no Arsenal player within 5 yards of him. And if you give a professional midfielder 5 yards to pick a pass in your half with no pressure, they'll pull you apart. They'll pull you apart. I'm going to use an NFL analogy. I apologize to everyone listening, but if you let an NFL quarterback sit in the pocket with no pressure, it doesn't matter if his receivers are crap. It doesn't matter if he's crap. He's going to find an open man. Eventually, the defenders can't cover them. And that's the truth in football as well, which is if you let professional strikers run around off the shoulders of defenders while the midfield has all day to pass, you're going to have a problem. So I was really sort of annoyed at the amount of ground we gave them to make the pass into Suarez. The run is good. Mustafi looks at him, lets him go. Chambers takes the oddest angle of attack I've ever seen in my life, which is he runs sort of parallel with him instead of trying to intercept the run. For you, what's the anatomy of that goal? And is it multiple layers of defensive breakdowns there, or would you like to just pin it on one guy?
No, it's always 3 or 4 mistakes in any goal. You're absolutely right about no pressure on the ball. So again, we name all these lovely players, but not all of them are pressing players. So we give people time. Golden rule, centre back. When people have got time on the ball, what do? You drop. You drop. You don't stand square, looking, hoping. You drop. We didn't really drop as a unit. We had a massive gap in between us. Suarez, I assumed that Suarez made the classic 2 run, 1 run for the defender, 1 run for you. We didn't really, he just sort of ran forward, which means the gap was there. And it's a beautiful pass, and we scored, and they scored. And I'm looking at it thinking, okay, this is a real concern, because when Mustafi came on, suddenly there was just nothing. There was no communication. There was just nothing there. I don't want to blame him, but it's just the common denominator. It's quite, when he comes on, he defends in a different way. At the moment, I mean, Tim said this a few pods back. He just looks for a way out, and he looks for a way out that it's not him, but it's him. Do you see what I mean? But he's looking not to be near the moment. I tell you, mate, his confidence is completely gone. He's completely shattered as a footballer. Forget what he can and can't do, because we've seen him play very good games, but he's not capable at the moment. And he's very from a human point of view, it's a shame, and it concerns me. I'm a softie, right? It concerns me when I see professional people that have played at the very highest level and got the very biggest medals in their back pocket suddenly can't do the absolute basics in a pre-season friendly, and that is concerning, that things have got on top of him, and so that does worry me, if I'm honest. So because the last 2 games, as soon as he's come on, he's just defended for himself and tried not to exacerbate a situation that he obviously feels, and that's just a classic sign of a loss in confidence completely about someone doing the basic fundamentals of his role. The fact that Emery gave him just 5 or so minutes and it still ended up in something that he's going to walk away with tells you where Emery is with him. Knowing how critical Socrates is, he still kept him on for that length of time. So there's something else going on here, and I hope for his sake he gets a move, because he needs a new environment. He really does. And in that new environment where he can be wanted, and I think that'll do wonders for him. Forget Arsenal for a second, there's a human being involved here, and he's really derailing right in front of us, and that's a shame. And I just hope we can get him to a place where he can play, because he's not going to play for us in his current state and get any sort of support from anybody, because I'm afraid most fans just want to see their team win, and I'm afraid they think that the salaries will mask their human feelings of the player, and they're entitled to abuse him and at him and all the rest of it. I don't agree with that, but it is what it is, and I can't change people's minds. I can't make people be nice. It's just the way it is in the real world, and this is top level elite sport, and that comes with the territory. Yeah. But for his sake, I hope he gets somewhere where he can play and refine his game.
Yeah, I mean, look, have a laugh at the guy's expense if you want. Just don't add him. You don't have to. Yeah. You don't have to tag him into it. Like, okay, this is all entertainment. We can have a laugh. It's fine. You don't have to bring the guy into it, for God's sakes. That drives me nuts. I look at it this way. I think we are what we are. We are the mullet of a football team. We're party in the front, business in the front, party in the back, right? We are the guy who skipped leg day. We're that team. And I think if Emery is willing to lean into the attack and willing to play on the front foot, he can shield it, mask it a little bit. We saw it in the first half. When we sit in a low block more, well, you see what happens in the second half. So, hopefully we'll find that balance. I think we're going to have a lot of fun previewing this season. I think the preseason was more encouraging and more uplifting than I expected it to be, both in terms of the transfer business we've done and may yet do, and in terms of the performance of the academy kids, and we'll talk about that later on in the week. But until then, we should probably leave it there. So Paul's on Twitter, Paz No Pants. Thanks, Paz. Woohoo. Tim's on Twitter, Stilberto. Thanks, Tim.
My pleasure as always.
Clive's on Twitter, ClivePAFC. Thanks, Clive.
Thank you very much.
My name's Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter, Yankee Gunner. Give us a 5-star review, please. And write nasty things about maybe Scott. Maybe. He's going to be on our season preview as well. There'll be the YouTube show with Andrew from Arseblog. That's on Friday. There'll be the Fantasy Premier League pod for patrons tomorrow. Season preview Wednesday. Patreon preview Thursday. It's a week of content. And then, that's not even to mention all of the Tierney and Upamecano content after we sign both of them. So lots of fun stuff ahead. And you know what? I'm going to do it. Oh, I think his name is Ice Baby. I'll get it right before the season. But we will talk to you after Arsenal 10, Newcastle 9.